Right. Good evening, everybody. Hopefully, there may be one or two people out there watching. If there is anyone there, if you would be so kind as to just post a comment just to make sure that you can see and hear me, that would be very, very helpful. We're using StreamYard, so hopefully that's working. And the other thing, just to double check, is to make sure that we're on the correct channel, because I did one of these from the tent a year or two ago talking about camping stuff, and I'd put the live stream on the watch channel. So would be a very good idea just to make sure that we're on the correct, that we're on the correct channel. Now, what I'm hoping to do, so like I said, if you're just joining us, just pop a comment there. Just let me know that you can see and hear me. That'd be very helpful. What I'm going to do, we're going to talk about the Scotland trip. So I've got my map here, so I can kind of follow it generally with that. But I've also got some photographs, and StreamYard, it seems to do lots of clever things. So what I can do is and we'll do this. So now, don't worry if you can't see me now. I'm still here. I can actually open up a window. So if you're there, you should be able to see food and some different photographs. So we'll kind of work through the photographs, as we go with this very professional presentation. So, and then if I press that button, that gets me back. And if I press that one, I've gone, but don't panic. I've got to see what I'm looking at. I can press that. You can see me in a corner, and then I can open that one up. And now you can see me, hopefully, down in the bottom left-hand corner, plus photograph. So if that's all working, let's go back to just me. The only problem with StreamYard, I can't actually, when you're doing a live stream on directly with YouTube, you can actually see whether there are people watching you. I don't know if anyone uses StreamYard, if there's some way of being able to see how many are watching you. Actually, no, up here on the left-hand side, I can see three viewers. So maybe three of you are watching. Well, it's better than none. If three of you, okay, I hope you can see and hear me. All right. I've got some water, so we're probably not going to get a huge number watching. So I've got water. It's increased to 5. Okay, good. All right, so basically I contacted Chris. Obviously, Chris isn't here on this occasion. If at some point you watch this, Chris, hello, we'll do a live stream sometime soon. All loud and clear. Brilliant, thank you. So I contacted Chris and I said, are you planning on doing anything in October? Because it would be really, really nice to do something like we did last year. And he did have a plan to do something in October, but he wasn't able to do it. I'm not going to say what it was because it's not my position to say what he was planning on doing. That's up to him to say when he's ready. But hopefully next year things are going to change. So I said, I'd still like to try and pop up and do some walking up in Scotland. So he said yes, and we kind of came up with some dates, eventually. So we met in Ballater, which is off my map. I don't know what maps people prefer using when it comes to, hello, peekaboo. When it comes to maps, some of you might prefer, Ordnance Survey maps. I must admit, I'm a big Harvey maps fan myself. I just find that for walking, they tend to give more walking, information than the Ordnance Survey maps, and they're a little bit easier, to read. So anyway, we met up in Ballater last week, and we set off. We drove over to Braemar, and basically the plan was let me just get up hang on a minute, let me open this window there. Now don't worry, I'm still here. Right, now hopefully you can see a photograph. You can't see me, so that's probably a good thing. But you can see a photograph. So I knew that we were planning on doing 5 days, as it turned out, or 5 nights. As it turned out, we ended up doing 4 nights. Hang on a minute. Let me just lower that a minute. No, just bear with me, because if I open up that one and then that one, now you can probably see me and the picture. So the original plan was we were going to do 5 nights. It actually worked out to 4 nights, and at one point it could even have been 3 nights, because the weather kind of turned a little bit on us. So I planned on this food. I actually took a tiny bit more, and I have got a video which I will probably release tomorrow on this food, what I packed. It's kind of in the video, it's more just packing. I haven't unpacked it or anything, but I just go through kind of generally what I'm taking. So that was the food that I took for 5 days, plus a teeny weeny bit more. And the plan was that we were going to walk through the forest, and hopefully you can see a rainbow now. And we were walking through this forest, and let's have a look at it. So okay, that's a few days away, so that's okay. So we were walking through the forest, and we were hoping to find somewhere to camp in the forest, but we couldn't find anywhere in the forest. So we ended up walking, a little bit further, than planned on that day, but not too much further. We were somewhat under Ben-Arn. I think I've got the name right there, hopefully. It's spelled Ben-Avon, but apparently it's Ben-Arn. Hopefully I got that right. So we camped under Ben-Arn, or near Ben-Arn, give or take a kilometre or 3 or 4. And the plan was that we were going to stay there, and rather than packing everything up the next day, we were going to go for a little stroll. And this is the corries, or whatever they're called. I'm not excuse my ignorance on terminology, but we basically went to top of a valley, and then in the valley was a lot of water. So we saw that. Obviously you've got Chris over there, and that's Lassie, and that was a river coming out from that corrie. So we headed up there. Basically, obviously I've got videos on all of this, so kind of bear with me. They'll be out relatively soon. So we got up there in the afternoon, and then we headed down mid-afternoon, something like that. We basically made an afternoon of it, and this is obviously a river coming out. It was flowing pretty well. We'd had a lot of rain the night that we got there. It was very, very wet, but generally it was so basically I try and sort of, not used to doing this live. So basically the original plan was that the first day we were going to camp in the forest, and the next day we were going to maybe go to the tops or into this corrie, and then the day after that we were going to go to the tops, and then like the next 2 days we hadn't exactly worked out what we were going to do. It was kind of rather open to interpretation, really, because like I said, it was Chris's time and plans changed quite a lot, so it was kind of pretty open as to what we were doing. So the weather on the Thursday was supposed to be quite nice and pleasant, but unfortunately on the Thursday, we checked the forecast and it was pretty miserable. Wet, windy, too windy to go up the top. It was like 40 odd mile an hour on the top, and of course anyone who's got half a brain, you can't really walk properly, and especially up there at 40 mile an hour, if you if you can imagine walking along the edge there and then getting blown down there at 40 miles an hour, that wouldn't go down very well. So it was a very, very fluid trip, basically. So anyway, we went up there today, and the next day we were half planning as to whether to head into the forest and head back. And if we'd have done that, that would have been a 3-day or a 3-night trip, which we didn't really want to do. So we came back down into camp. So this is camp down here. So I had the cricket, and Chris over there had my friend's Destin X Mid 1, the original version. I've realized now they've kind of updated it. And then that's the cricket in camp. So let me just... Okay, all right. So that's I was just checking comments just to make sure there was nothing, no one was saying anything untoward or anything, or I was doing something wrong. So hopefully you can see a picture of the cricket. So that was the cricket pitched basically at the top of the river. We were, like I said, aiming for the forest, but it didn't quite work out. And that's my friends, which I borrowed, and now Chris is borrowing the first generation cricket. And eventually we're going to come to this story here. So before we head there, let me minimize that. So I'm still here. Let me bring my ugly mug back again. Okay, all right. So we'll come on to having to shift camp in a moment. Let me just wet my whistle. So on the Thursday, the weather forecast, 1 minute was miserable weather, and then the next minute it was, oh, today's going to be quite a pleasant day. And it was really quite confusing as what to do on that Thursday. So Chris said, do you want to go down into the forest? We could stay the Friday night in the forest, which would have effectively have been the third night. And if we'd have done that, then we would have left and come out on the Friday. But I didn't really want to come out quite so soon. And like I said, we used Garmin forecast, and I'm not absolutely convinced by how accurate the Garmin forecast was, because the mountain weather forecast was saying that Thursday was going to be pretty miserable, very windy and unpleasant. And the Garmin forecast for Thursday was saying that it would be not too windy and maybe some sun or something like that. So we kind of took a little bit of a chance on what to do on the Thursday. And we basically thought we would try and get up to Ben Aaron, Arn. Think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Arn. we were thinking of trying to go up to Ben Arn, but as we started to go up, the weather was kind of getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and it was very wet, very windy as we were heading up, and it was kind of getting to the point where we were also able to update the weather forecast to a more accurate, proper one. And basically the weather forecast was saying windy, rain all afternoon, gusting up to 45 mile an hour or something like that. I must admit, I was like, because I'm an idiot, I was like, yeah, we'll manage that. Chris was, no, we're not going up. We're not going up in 40 mile an hour winds. You know, you can barely stand up in 30, 35. So, you know, obviously, you know, you just can't do it. In common sense, when the winds are 35, 40, certainly not going to do 40, you got to head back, you know, for your own safety and sensibleness, especially when you're in the middle of the Cairngorms. You know, I suppose in the Lake District or Peak District or Dartmoor or something, you're not going to fall off anything. well, within reason. The lakes and the peaks, I suppose you might. But but basically, you really, really, really are in the middle of nowhere when you're in the Cairngorm. So you really don't be messing around. So basically, we ended up retreating back into camp. So basically, what happened was, let me come to there and then show that. So we came back into camp, and it was around about we got back into camp at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and from there we packed up because we weren't going to stay here. We were either going to head to the forest, which I said no, let's try to do something else. So I don't have any other photographs in between. Now I've figured this out, I'll maybe try and take some more photographs, which might help. This might be useful. So basically, we headed out, we packed up, and we were gone by 4. And let me get myself back up again. So like I said, we packed everything up, put all our stuff on. Let me, hang on a minute, let me minimize that window, get myself back again. Oh, it's all very professional, isn't it? Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification button, everything else like that would be very useful. Oh, I still haven't forgotten that I need to do this help Tony learn something thing, so bear with me on that. Watch my cheddar video if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, but I've not forgotten that. Just bear with me a minute. I will just mention Andrew Terrell's book. He sent this to me. Check it out sometime or other. Whether I actually get around to reading it or not, I don't know. But I've heard a lot of people have enjoyed reading it. So check, do check that book out if you're interested. And obviously, I don't know whether these are in print or not, but don't forget, check out Chris Townsend's, books, as well, if you want some, some information from someone who actually knows what he's doing, not just YouTubers who go out and do whatever. So we packed up, we crossed the stream, and we started to head down the valley. And of course, we went down the valley. Can't really show you anything on the map, but because I don't think it will really. I think it's too dark in here as well. I'll maybe try and get some more. Get some more light or something like that in it. I'm not going to waste time. But anyway, we went down the valley, and eventually we came to this old bridge. We crossed the bridge, and we found somewhere to camp. We started thinking about setting up camp, and then we looked at where the river was, and we looked at where the reeds were near where we were thinking about picking up or setting up camp. So hello, Amateur Explorer, if you're still there, Nick Nickerson, if you're still there, Poop Deck, if you're still there, and Kernow EXP. Say hello to you for being there, and anyone else, say hello. And also, well, I'm trying to sort of mention, Chris Townsend books and things like that. I just want to say thank you while Poop Deck is there for your membership, Organized Chaos for your membership, and the newest member, JJ, who is from America and is one of the Magnificents, which is very brave. So thank you to the three members that we have. Hello, Poop Deck. So we crossed the bridge, we found somewhere to camp, and then basically we looked and we could see reeds and things like that on the ground that obviously the river had overflowed, and I probably would have pitched there because the forecast was for a dry evening, and it probably wouldn't have rained. I don't think any more water would have come down the river, so we probably would have been okay. So I probably would have just stayed there anyway. But Chris being Chris, obviously safety first. We didn't camp there. Luckily, there was somewhere else to pitch about 200 or 300 meters away, and we set up there. And it was probably around about, and it was probably around about 7 o'clock when we pitched. So everything, we got all settled down, nice and cozy. and the winds started to pick up. They weren't too much at the start, but they started to pick up a little bit. And Chris had his pacer poles for his Solar Mid XL, and I think he probably needs to get a slightly longer pole, you know, for the Solar Mid XL, because I had a custom made pole for the Cricket, and that actually had a fault with it. So I've got to get onto Josh at Ruta Lacura poles to get that fixed, but it worked enough for the trip. And we set up camp, and I was settled in, and then I had my dinner, and I had chicken, which I made my own chicken. I took that, and I had my soup, and I was quite cozy. I must admit, the Cricket was bouncing around me quite a lot, and I was quite cozy, to be honest. And then, I don't know, maybe it was about 8:30, 9, something like this. This light started to come over, and then this bearded mountain man head sort of appeared in the doorway of the Cricket. And I was watching a film. I can't remember. I was watching something. I can't remember what film it was now, but I was watching something, and it made me jump. I wasn't quite expecting a Yeti to appear in the doorway. So it made me jump. And then Chris said that the Solar Mid XO was shaking a lot, you know, in the wind, and he was a bit worried about whether his pacer pole would stand up. So I made the suggestion, if he uses other pacer pole, strapped it to the first pacer pole, and that would help strengthen it. And also the other thing that I suggested as well, and amazingly, I've got one here. This one I actually broke a while ago, but I recommended my bung idea. So, oh, Nick, new member. Oh, bloody hell. Thanks, Nick. Very nice. Thank you. So I recommended my bung thing because the problem that Chris was having with his pacer pole is he didn't have a bung on the end. So, of course, the tip of the pacer pole was sinking into the ground, and he was losing about an inch or inch and a half. Yeah, I think it is another. I think it is another new member. Yeah, I think that's. I think Nick is now a new member. Yeah, that's four. That's four now. Yeah, we're too popular now. Nice. Thank you very much. So I suggested to put the bung on the tip, and then obviously that gives that extra inch and a half of height to the pacer pole. So I did mention that earlier on, and I think that helped a little bit. But obviously he was still having a few problems. So his main problem was his pole wasn't long enough. And pink waving. Yeah, you got to show your pinky, and then you got to show your boobie, and show your leg, and whatever else it is, you got to show a rear roll or something like that. Although if it's before you show your ass too. Anyway, let's keep it sensible, otherwise we'll scare everybody off. So after I made the suggestion about, you know, strengthening his pole, I was kind of like thinking, I hope he doesn't come back, because I must admit, I really didn't want to move. I really didn't want to move. But I got there was no signal there at all, and I looked at the mountain forecast, and the mountain forecast did show that the wind was slowly, you know, getting a little bit worse. And the wind was getting worse, and it wasn't my wind either. Although actually, I need to keep a pen handy. Okay, yeah. Remind me if you think of it. Remind me about wind, because that's kind of important as well. So remind me about wind in a minute. Face blue smiling. Well, actually, definitely face and blue was definitely right because of wind. And if I come back, let's go back. So the first night, one thing I do suggest is, if you need to have a crap, a poop, a number two, whatever it is you need to do, I really do suggest that you do it, because normally when I'm at home and I need to go, you kind of get out of bed and you pop to the loo, and you do your you dip your you do your business, and it's kind of simple and easy. I must admit, pooping is not my favorite thing outside, and I find it even more problematic when I'm with someone, even when they're pitched a little bit away. I just find it a little bit uncomfortable for whatever reason. So we $1. So we thank you very much, Nick. Thank you very much. Well, I'll do a welcome thing for you as well. So so the first night I literally I literally didn't stop farting all night. And I think it's because I was too lazy or too awkward to get out. And because it was dark and we got there quite late, I didn't really know what the lay of the land was. So that evening, I just didn't go, and it kept me awake. It kept me awake. I just couldn't. I think I may have fallen asleep for a minute or two. I kept farting every hour. And I just couldn't fall asleep that night. It was not the worst night, not the worst night. We're going to come to probably the worst night in a minute, but it was probably one of the worst nights that I've ever had. Anyway, so I got up the next day. I think I must have got a bit of sleep, but anyway, I got up the next day, and that's when we went up that hill. And I said to Chris, I'm going to have to go and pop over by that rock over there and then carry out some business over there. Anyway, so yeah, so I do recommend it if you need to go to try and help yourself. I mean, peeing is not a problem. Just pee in your porch or whip out for 2 seconds. But if you've got to poop, I really do suggest that you go out and do your business. Just do it, because then you're more likely to get to sleep. Because like I said, I literally couldn't sleep that night because I was literally just farting every half hour. I just couldn't. Anyway, so back to where we are now. So anyway, Chris, yeah, so I ate my dinner and everything else like that. And I checked the weather forecast on Garmin, and Garmin also agreed with the mountain forecast that the wind was slowly increasing as the evening went on. And I thought, Chris is going to notice. He's going to look. I mean, knowing Chris, he's not going to not notice that the wind is going to increase. And I was like, sort of thinking, I was kind of like, so now what can I do? Maybe if I was like sort of thinking all these different things in my head as to what I could do to pretend. Doing a number 2 is probably the worst thing about camping for me. Yeah, it is. I just don't like it. If I'm by myself, it's not so bad. And I must admit, summer months is even easier, because in the summer I can just whip out barefoot, don't worry me, and I walk, some way away from camp, just being careful my feet are going. And if I'm by myself, it wouldn't be the first time I've just gone out in my underwear, and just chopped my underwear and done it. But I don't know, it's just when I'm with someone else, I just find it more difficult. And another thing that I did as well, I don't know if anyone else has done this, but before I went, and I don't think I'm going to do this again, but before I went, oh my God, I was taking, oh my God, talking about crapping now. I took laxatives. I took laxatives. Well, I was like sort of thinking, but if I took something before I went, that maybe when I was out, I wouldn't need to go so much. But all it did, it made me go like twice as much. Yeah. And then when I was actually out there, I needed to go twice as much, and I wasn't going. So I am not completely convinced taking laxative before you go is a very good idea. So I maybe wouldn't do that either. You can maybe learn from my from my thing. So anyway, I was in camp, and I could tell that the wind, not my wind, but the wind outside was like, God, the wind was getting worse outside. And I checked on Garmin, and that was getting worse. And I was thinking, Chris is going to notice this. And I just know, because I know that Chris wants to sleep. I think he was a bit concerned that the Solarmid XL would would collapse in the wind as well. Although, to be honest, it probably would have been okay. And it probably would have been better if he'd have got his correct extension on his pole. It might have been a bit better. So I was kind of like thinking, I know he's going to want sleep. And I know from experience with hearing his stories before that if he can't sleep, he'll move. And I was like sort of thinking, well, if it was someone else, and we were on, say, Dartmoor or the lakes, and it was fairly close to civilization, and someone said to me, we're not happy, we want to go, I probably would say, okay, I feel like I want to stay here because I feel safe. And if you can get to the car or something like that yourself, then do that. Just let me know you got there safely, because I really don't like moving. That's why in many of my camps, even when it's flooded and it's windy and all of that, it literally takes either a hurricane, a Godzilla, or a Chris Townsend, to make me move. So if I was with someone else and it was somewhere where the other person, if they wanted to go, could go somewhere safely, and I felt confident where I was, I probably would just stay. But we were in the middle of the Cairngorms. It was Chris Townsend. Literally, probably no one on earth has as much experience as that. And if he's saying, let's move, then it's kind of like reluctantly, okay, let's move. But anyway, I was still lying in bed and I knew the weather was getting worse. And I was kind of like sort of thinking, now, what can I do? Maybe if I turn my light off, and I didn't actually do this because we didn't get that far, but I was sort of thinking, maybe if I turn my light off and maybe pretend I'm asleep, then maybe it's like, it's like when you were a child, I had these weird thoughts going in my head. I just prevent him coming over and making us move. So I was kind of like sort of thinking, okay, well, what do children do? They think there's a monster. They think there's a monster under the bed. So they cover themselves up to try to make sure that the monster doesn't come and get them. And I'm not saying that Chris is a monster, but he's obviously a big scary Yeti. So I thought, what can I do? If I close my eyes, pretend I'm asleep, then he won't come over. Anyway, obviously we didn't get that far. I didn't close my eyes. I didn't go to sleep. And about 15, 20 minutes later, I saw this light start to get nearer to the tent, to the front of the cricket. And I thought, okay, I know what he's going to say. So he said, it's too windy. He's never going to be able to sleep where he is. Would we be able to move? So I'm just going to, let me move over. Let me just get this picture back up again. So this is basically the next morning. And then this is the forest that evening. But these three photographs were basically the next morning. So hopefully you can see me in a corner and you can see a photograph. So basically what happened was Chris said he was nearly packed up. He was very apologetic and he said, do we mind if is it okay? He said we have to move. So of course I was like sort of thinking, okay. And to be fair, it was a good experience, and if I'm going to move with anyone without a single worry, without a single fear, with no worries, no concerns whatsoever, then it's quite frankly, it's with Chris. And I wasn't in the least bit concerned. The only problem that I had, it was this, I took this torch with me again, and just before Chris came around the second time, because I'd been using it for about 3 hours already, and I'd had it on high and medium beam, just before Chris came round, it flashed. No, it didn't flash, because the petrol lights flashed to indicate the battery's going down. And the first version of this one, when it died, it literally would just die. So you could be looking at something and then it would just stop. There'd be no light at all. and they have now updated it. This is just like the second version. And now when the battery starts to go, it will actually dim rather than just die on you. So of course, literally the moment that Chris came around, it dimmed. And I've now got Chris saying that we need to move, and my torch has just dimmed on me. So I had the power pack out handy, and I thought, well, I can't pack up with my head torch. I had a spare emergency head torch with me as well, one of those tiny Petzl ones with the twisty thing on it, but I really didn't want to break that out unless I had to. But I did have a second spare torch with me, and I think Chris had a second torch as well. And he said, just make sure that your phone is charged up and everything else like that. But I've got a Garmin, and the 7, this is the 7, and the newer ones, they've got little torches on them. And basically, I put the power pack onto this for the half an hour, 40 minutes that it took me to pack up. So that was charging. And I didn't film any of the packing up. It was just basically, we just needed to pack and just get going. So I didn't film any of that. But basically, I was putting power into that. And then with the torch from this, I packed up. And that was the only light that I had for packing up. And I have to say, it was bright enough. You kind of had to sort of angle it like this and that type of thing. But it worked well enough, I have to say. It was more than enough to pack up. So I got everything packed up. The wind was getting stronger. Luckily, thankfully, it didn't rain. And the forecast, whilst the forecast was for the wind to get stronger, it was not due to rain, thankfully. So I posted this picture and this picture and this picture. I posted these pictures on Facebook and Instagram and a couple of other places. And I said, who do you think, well, I didn't really ask a question. It was more of a rhetorical question, to be honest. But I said, who do you think had the better night? Me in the cricket? Can you all, all 9 of you, I'll just bring the picture back to me. So you've seen the pictures. I'll bring the pictures back in a minute, but just so I can see comments. The big monster Chris. So let me bring me back. Right, I'll ask a question and you can put your answers in a comment and I'll tell you in a minute. Who do you think had the better night? Me under the cricket or Chris in a small Terra Nova moonlight bivvy? Who do you think had the better night? Me in the cricket or Chris in a bivvy? Who do you think had the better night? So basically, we walked down the valley and we were walking for about, we only walked a kilometer. It really wasn't very far. And we got down there and luckily by chance, we came across that hut. And all the doors, I think it's a hunting lodge. So all the doors were locked. You can see them locked from the outside. There was one door around the back and that door was locked. There was no way in, whatsoever. And basically Chris said that there's that little flat area there. We're going to have to pitch up. We're going to have to do something in that area there because we could just end up walking down the valley, for another half hour or hour in the dark. And obviously, when you can see large areas around you, obviously, you can get a rough idea as to where you might be able to pitch. But when you're stumbling around in the dark, I don't know how you find somewhere to camp. I suppose it's just pot luck whether you're stumbling along and you find a flat area or something like that. But anyway, we came across this building. So I'll call the picture. Let me get the picture back up again in a minute. And so, okay. So if I just move it just to the right so I can see it myself better. So if I'm looking over that way, it's because I'm looking at the picture. I try to look into the camera as much as I can. Hello. So basically we got to the pitch here. And I don't know whether you can see the cursor, but this is a side. There's this huge overhang on the top. I don't know how big the overhang was, probably about 3 feet. It was a pretty big overhang of wooden structure there. Chris, that is correct. Yes, it was Chris had the better night, correct. And I mean, Chris, he's very good. I mean, you know, he gave me this beautiful flat area just there, beautiful flat area right there. And he had his area here was relatively flat, all things considered. Lizzie in the cricket, show Lassie and Lizzie. Well, the only way that I can show them is, hang on. I can get these pictures up. I don't know if I can get other pictures up, but hang on a minute. Lizzie. I don't know whether the long time ago ones remember Gizzy, but we had to, I'm by myself now for those that either know or don't know or anything, and Gizzy had to go around to mum's for a bit, but we've got Gizzy back. She's half asleep at the moment, and she's a bit older than Lizzie. Hang on a minute, I'll be right back. You're all asleep. Lizzie, come here. Oh, I just realised that the microphone is I think Lass is somewhere. There's Lizzie. Actually, another thing I just realised is you might just want to turn your volume down a bit. I just realised the microphone was over there a bit. So there's Lizzie. They're all half asleep at the moment. So there's Lizzie. Lassie. She's asleep somewhere. Maybe she's sleeping. Lassie. Okay, well, that's Lizzie anyway. Maybe Lassie will come in a minute. Yeah, so I've got the microphone a bit closer now as well. I'm trying to bang my head on it. So that's your so you see my dog and you see my pussy now. So basically, let's back on topic quickly. So down here we've got this space down here where Chris went. So he took the rough apart, bless him. Oh dear. And then I had a nice flat area there. He did have a stone under him too. Although, to be fair, I think he could have moved that stone actually. But I know he had a stone under him. So he put this foam mat down first. And of course, it's just typical. The reason why I've got a picture of him packing up here rather than everything set out. So make sure you check out his Facebook and Instagram and everything, because I think he took some photographs. So you better get a better picture of his setup there. But basically what he did, he put the foam mat down first, and then he put his the Terra Nova bivvy out, and then he put the sleeping bag inside that. And I think he started to try to fall asleep on that, but I think the stone and everything, you know, kept him awake a bit. So he then blew up his airbed, but he didn't put the airbed. So this is a bit of a, you know, information. He didn't put the airbed inside the bivvy. He put his airbed, you know, a yellow X light on top of the foam mat. And I said, you know, is it okay to do that? He said, yes, just, you know, be careful. So he put his foam mat, his airbed on top of the foam mat, and then basically we had the sleeping bag inside the Terra Nova Moonlight Bivy, which was the first edition one. They've since changed it. So that was Chris's setup. And I was like kind of sort of thinking, well, I'll try and be clever and I'll try and set up the cricket over there. But you can see from this photograph that you can see the yellow peg and the yellow line there from the edge of the cricket. And then if I call up, where's the other photograph? If I call up this one here, then obviously you can see the line there, but you can kind of see two problems here. I don't know which one. So then you've got that one there. So this picture here, so these two probably show it better. It would have been, so that probably shows it as good as anything. So if I come back to this picture here, so the first problem that you can see is there's a 3-foot overhang at the top. And if I'd have been able to have scooted right up against the wooden wall, I suppose, I would have been obviously, one, on a very flat bit of ground, and two, obviously I would have had the protection of that roof thing, you know, up against that thing. But by putting the cricket here, the edge of the cricket was is about 6 inches away from the wall. So straight away, the cricket isn't flush to the back, it's forward a bit. And obviously you can't sleep right at the back of the cricket because obviously it angles down. You need to be as close to the pole as you can, as you can possibly get within reason. But the pole, which you can't really see the pole. Let's go to this one here. So the pole here, you can see down here, it was on about 1 stone and held up by about 2 other stones because I needed to get the height, because I had the pole itself was working, but the extending bit in the pole wouldn't work. It's faulty. So I've got onto Ruta to either get it fixed or replaced. So I had to put my pole on this stone just down here to get a little bit of height. But as you can see, it's not a very tight pitch. It's not as tight as I'd like it. And the other problem was the wind was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, look at Chris over here. Okay, maybe his head was kind of out that way a tiny bit, but for the most part, Chris had the shelter of the entire building. Me, if I'd have laid down, you can see my ground sheet is within the confines of that part of the building. The ground sheet only goes about within 8-10 inches of the end of the building, no more than that. But look at the cricket. The cricket's like about a foot beyond the building, and you've got a 40-odd mile-an-hour wind coming from that side of the building, smacking into the side of the cricket. So the cricket was, and it's not as tight as I would have liked it either. So of course the cricket was shaking, a lot more, than ideal. Let's face it. Let's put it. And then of course you can see where the bed is under the cricket, and it's not right next to the pole. It's right. And also you can see this big bank of soil here. So this big bank of soil was pushing the bed because where the edge of the cricket is literally on this, already on that bank a little bit. So I was being pushed to the back of the cricket, and then of course the back of the cricket was just thumping into my head, and and I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep at all. I think I had one dream, which was me farting. I literally dreamt I farted and it woke me up. And other than that, I didn't sleep at all. So it came morning, and those of you that watch my videos know that I don't exactly rush, in the morning, and even if the weather's really, really poor, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to stay where I was. But I must admit, I was like counting the time down to when morning would finally, you know, to when morning would finally come along, so we could start packing up and get going. And I think 7:30 it was light, you know, in the morning. And I think we were gone. I think we were gone by about 8:30, 9:15. I don't think you can see my cooking pot. I didn't even take the cooking pot out. I don't know, but I don't think it's that. I didn't even take the cooking pot out. For me to not even have a cup of tea when I got there, because it was like gone midnight by the time we were set up, and not even to have a cup of tea in the morning. You kind of get, you kind of understand how not very nice it was there. So obviously I had a conversation. Oh, and then the reason why Chris was packing up and I didn't get the pictures, of course, because the day before, when we were walking up to think about doing Ben Arn and something else up there, I wanted to go to the loo again, but because the weather was horrible and it was raining and it was miserable, I didn't go. And of course we came down, and then we had to come to our first camp of the evening, and I didn't go there. And then of course when we came into camp here, I wasn't gonna I think Chris did go off and do something, but I didn't go again, which was really, really stupid. And between the wind and me farting all night again, because I didn't go to poopy or anything, I didn't fall asleep again that night either. So of course I got up in the morning, and then I did wander off and do my business. And of course, in the time that I was doing my business, I didn't get to take a picture of Chris's setup because he started packing up while I was off, you know, having a clear out. So anyway, we packed up, and then we kind of had the conversation, because when we got here, Chris said that, you know, he was going to, you know, that we could bivvy here. Basically, Chris said, we'll bivvy here. And I was sort of thinking, okay, you haven't got a second bivvy by any chance, have you? And of course, you know, obviously he didn't. And I was sort of thinking, but he said you could go up, you know, he said it's the forecast is for no rain. I said it's not going to rain all night if the forecast is accurate. And he said if you go right up against the edge of the building, you'll be fine. Like I said, it was only because I was just being a bit too clever, maybe, and just seeing whether the cricket would pitch there. To be fair enough, it pitched just. And if it hadn't have been windy, it would have been fine. You know, it wouldn't have been ideal, but it would have been okay. And I must admit, if I'd have gone to the loo, I probably would have slept okay. But just, it was the perfect storm of wind and not going, and I didn't sleep. So I was so then was, you know, thinking, well, I need to think about, you know, getting a bivvy. And of course, I got the Mountain Laurel Designs ultralight bivvies, but they're not waterproof. And I looked up. Let me put that picture back down again a minute. Hang on. Let me minimize that page there and get me back again. Okay. So basically, I just then had the, you know, I was then sort of started to think, well, I need to get, you know, I need a bivvy that's not heavy that I can take to the Cairngorms, particularly. I probably not so urgent and necessary on Dartmoor or the lakes or something like that. Most places you can probably get down to civilization relatively simply. But in the Cairngorms, you really, it really is a completely different kettle of fish as to where you know, you just in the middle of nowhere, and you can't get out. So I looked up the Moonlight. So Chris had the first edition of the Terra Nova Moonlight, but they've changed it. Although I did email them, and they did email back, you can actually close it, because his version of the Moonlight is 200 grams or something like that. It's very small, very small. It's 200 grams, so clearly you can carry it, and you're not going to know that you're carrying it, basically. It has a draw string on it, you know, to do it up if you need to do it up. And I said, what happens if it rains? And he said, well, you could just turn it over. And then if it's turned over, the rain will kind of run off it and less likely to run in it. But I checked the Moonlight, and the one they do now has a big mesh front like that, like a bug mesh thing. So I was kind of like sort of thinking, well, that's not ideal because it's waterproof, but rain could still get in there. I have since found out from Terra Nova that you can actually cinch that tight, but I would imagine you'd lose, quite a bit of space because that mesh space looked quite big. So that was obviously one option. I asked a question on a group. They mentioned the Sol, SOL, the Sol bivy bag. I didn't go that way. Unsurprisingly, I went the Mainstream Designs route and asked Ron if I could have another of the FKT bivvies from there, because obviously I bought from them a while ago the large Soul event bivvy, but it's just a little bit too big and it's a little bit bulky to be taking, as an emergency. So I kind of did sort of I did ask Ron, I just say, would it be possible? Any chance, please? So yeah, so that was very kind. How shocking you went with MLD. Yeah, that's a surprise, isn't it? I'm amazed, actually. I thought Terra Nova first, and then I was looking at SOL, and then I was looking someone else. No one would have guessed. and then someone else mentioned about Alpkit Klein or something like that. So I looked all those up. I will admit, I did even look those up really before I properly twigged MLD. And I was like sort of thinking, but all of these things, and then Terra Nova, they also do a survival bivvy, which is kind of similar to the one that Chris has with the drawstring, but it's 340 grams. And I was sort of thinking, why is that heavier? I didn't really understand why that was heavier. And then I was sort of thinking, I wonder, surely Ron must do something, surely Ron must do something. What am I thinking? So then I looked on their website, and then of course I thought, yeah, they do the FKT bivy bag, and if the medium, it zips right up. It's the event on the top, so it's completely waterproof. It's breathable. It was 270 grams, so it was like, I don't know, like 10-20 grams more than the Alpkit, but probably significantly better. It was a little bit heavier than the Terra Nova, but it's bound to be a bit better. Event is bound to be more breathable than whatever Terra Nova is using. Plus, with the Terra Nova one, it's a drawstring only. So, okay, it's unlikely that any water would get in there if you turn it upside down. But I mean, a zip closure and everything else like that. Just so, yeah. So, so basically now we're going to get an emergency bivvy that can go in the bottom of the pack. So if we have a situation like this again, in the future, then, I got a nice bivvy bag that I can get into in an emergency. So we will keep an eye out on the post, for that. So basically then we packed up, we headed off over the top, and the wind was getting pretty windy, because basically we were heading to the forest over the other side, because then we were going to have one more night in the forest before heading out, and then obviously coming back the next day. So if I go back to the photographs, call that up, and so this is a few of the forest photographs. And obviously I took these in the afternoon, because when we woke up the next day, it was raining. So we walked through the forest, and basically first we walked over the top, and it was like howling a gale. It was probably, of course, we had the conversation about wind, not that type of wind, about how most likely people make up wind speed, because I measured the wind speed at one point, and the highest that I measured was about 38, 39 mile an hour, walking across the top to get to the forest. And we were being moved about a bit, let's say. We weren't being blown over, we weren't being knocked off our feet, but walking in a straight line was next to impossible. Bora gear make another good bivvy option. Brilliant. So if anyone's looking for a bivvy, that's another Bora gear. So that's another option, you know, if anyone is looking for something. So thank you. I'd not heard. I've heard of the company, but I did not look that up. I must admit, I didn't. No one mentioned it at that time, so I didn't. But there you go. So there's another option for you there. So we were being blown about, you know, a bit, you know, to try and get down into the forest. And luckily we found this spot in the forest. And obviously I put the cricket here. Chris put the Solar XL, you know, over there. And obviously we had Lassie. The river was just over to the right. You can't see it. It's quite good, this, isn't it? It's quite clever, this. I'll maybe I'll have to remember this in the future and grab a few more photographs. So that was us basically, you know, set up for the evening, and we got there about lunchtime. We had a nice afternoon, relaxing. I think I fell asleep. I think Chris fell asleep because I don't think we had a huge amount of sleep the night before. And I think the walk over the top to get down to here was pretty windy too. So also in camp, we did do a little bit of video before it got dark of going through Chris's gear. So that's another video. So basically, I've got about 4 days worth of video of the trips that we actually did, of the days that we did. And then I did a video on Chris's kit as well. So that'll be another video that we did. And then I've also got a video on the food that I took. So that's why obviously I had that food there. So I've got this basic video. So I'll probably release that maybe tomorrow or something like that. So that's all the photographs. So that's actually worked quite well. So let's come back to, so that's come back to me. So that's all the photographs. So that's kind of interesting. That's interesting to see. So we're nearly finished. Let me go and see if I can just find the big dog a minute. And then we'll get going in a minute. Let's see. Yes, sleepy dog. Come on. Let's see quickly. Oh, let's see. Oh, come here. Oh, let's see. Oh, I can't do everything for you. Unless you're in the water, you're not interested in anything, just sleeping. Sleepy, 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 sleepy. Oh my God. There's Lassie. So, wave to your fans. Hello. Hello. I was fast asleep and Daddy came in and woke me up. Hello. Oh, Lassie, you waiting? Oh no, Liz is coming now. You looking forward to your next splash? Yeah, I'm looking forward to my next splash. Where do you want to go? Well, we might go to Cheddar. Yeah, we might go to Cheddar sometime. Oh, and Liz is here. And then Lizzie came in to say hello too. And Giz is still asleep. All right. And then, of course, the next day, hand paint waving. And then, obviously, the next morning, we packed up, and it was miserable weather. Really, really, really. It wasn't windy, but it was incredibly wet. We got very, very wet. So I did a bit of film as well, walking into the car. I don't know how much we got on that day, but obviously walking into the car. Some of the roads were busy. Sorry, not the roads. Some of the paths and trails and tracks and things like that was just flooded. I mean, the Dee had burst its banks and everything else like that. So it was yeah, it was wet getting back to the car, but anyway, we got back to the car and we had a very nice trip. And that's it. So it's taken just over an hour to do that. Lizzie, she is she's about 4 years old. She's about 4 now. Yeah, she's about 4. She's wandered off again now. But yeah, she's 4. The other half at the time wanted a small dog. So I kind of sort of said, okay, we'll get a small dog. But other half, unfortunately, things just didn't quite. Well, anyway, it's different. It doesn't matter. But it's just me, and I had to keep Lizzie. So thankfully, when parents are still around, so when it's cold, wet, and windy, I leave Lizzie, with her. And when it's nice and sunny, and weather's reasonable, or I feel confident enough that I can take her with me, then I'll take her with me. But she's clearly not, she's clearly not a border collie or anything else like that. So we'll see how we get on with her. But yeah, so so she's 4. So if you've got any other questions or comments or anything else like that, whack them there. I'm just going to disappear for 30 seconds and warm up my cup of tea, and then I'm going to bring my cup of tea back. And then, like I said, if there's any other things like that, I'll answer them, and then we'll finish up in a minute. So I'll just give you a minute, and then I'll be right back. Let's see. All right. Humble apologies. Cheers to everybody. Probably the wee room. Yeah. Lizzie will fit in the pack. Yes. Annie, I see you, Annie. I see you, Annie. Hi, you popped in late as usual with polite comments. Cup of tea. Yeah. I will have to do that in a minute. Hope you're enjoying the cricket this go around. Looks like you were able to pitch it low. Yes. Yeah. You can pitch it relatively low. I still think the Sil Nylon one you could probably pitch a little bit lower, but I have to say though the oh yeah, you're very much appreciated, Annie. Always very much appreciated. You can pitch it low enough that it still works fine. The cricket still works fine, and you can get the door, fairly low and everything. I've not yet had the cricket in weather where I can pitch it higher to see how well it pitches high and how you can get, if it's possible to get like a high door on it. I've seen pictures of a high door on the poly cricket, but so far with my lower pitches, you can't. It's just not stretchy enough, to be able to. It's not stretchy enough to be able to do that. But with the, but a low pitch is fine, and you can get it. You probably can't get it as low as the nylon cricket. I don't think you can. I'm sure the nylon cricket you would be able to get a bit lower from what I've seen and heard, but I've never tried it, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean it worked fine, and it was. I mean, even Chris said that the cricket looked stable, in that wind. Like I said, I probably would have just stayed. I probably would have just stayed in that wind and probably wouldn't have shifted. And I think it would have been okay. I think it would have been okay. So yeah, you can do. Yeah, it's good, and I like to be able to look out. On one of my videos earlier today, someone had the Solar Mid XL, and the cricket, and they made the comment that you you can't, obviously, unless you open the door, you can't look out of the Solar Mid XL, you know, and they like the idea, and I do too, of being able to look, you know, being able to look out of the solar of the cricket. It's, you know, it's nice to be able to see, it's nice to see what you're looking at, you know, to be honest. And even if it's raining or something, the rain didn't get in or anything else like that. And it was really, 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 really wet. It was a very, very wet trip, and I was perfectly dry under there. So, you know, it worked very, very well. So I will get going, I think. Thank you all very, very much. This was quite interesting and fun. Now I figured this StreamYard thing out. I maybe try to remember, you know, to take some photographs, and I figured out how to do this. That is the appeal for it. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be able to look at, and that's what I like. That's why I like the mids as well, like the you know, the Duo Mid or the Duo Mid XL or the Super Mid. All of those, you can leave them open, and a parked text green came over. All of those you can pitch them, and you can leave the door open, and you've got a view. And even when it's raining, unless it's really windy, and then you can't get, you know, and then it's too windy, and then you need to close the door. But other than that, you know, you can leave the you know, the doors open on those, which is nice. But in most tents, once it starts raining, you've got to close the door, which is a shame. You know, I bought the orange cricket because I missed the last one. I bought from you eons ago. Yeah, Annie, yes, that's right. You bought the original cricket, and the original cricket was a bit on the small side. So they have, you know, they have made the newer versions bigger. The older versions could be pitched much higher. The older versions could be pitched much higher. So disappointed. But I think the new one, you can still pitch it higher. I would have thought this one you could still pitch high. Sold my DCF Trail Star and ordered the Sil Poly version of the Trail Star. Looking forward to trying it. Yeah, I mean, the odd thing is that the Poly Trail Star, Poly doesn't stretch, but it stretches enough that it's in a completely different ballpark to the DCF Trail Star. The Trail Star is a pain, you know, it really is difficult to pitch that Cuban Trail Star is really, really difficult. So I'm not surprised that not many people keep them. And yeah, the Sil Poly Trail Star, that's, yeah, you should be fine with that. And there's a million videos on my channel. And just, you know, if you get stuck with it or anything, or if anyone gets stuck with anything, just send me a message or something like that. I can try to help with things. All right. Anyway, I'm going to get going, and I will see you hopefully again in the future. Maybe do another one of these after another trip sometime. So we got up to about 10 or 11 of you at one point. So that's very kind of you. Thank you very much. And thank you to the members. thank you to the members. And the other new member that we had was Nick. So we even gained a member. So very, very nice. Thank you very much. So Poly, solid in wind and zero stretch. Yeah, but it still has enough stretch. It's still completely different to Cuban fiber. No night, Tony. All the best to everybody. Thanks very much indeed. And I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to check out the video. So there's quite a bit coming in from this trip and everything. Thanks very much. See you again soon. Thanks.